Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Settlers Lament live stream. And yeah, we're pretty late today, but this one definitely is not my fault. As my clearly loyal and well-informed viewer here points out, it's never my fault. That's very good. Today is though quite clearly 21st's fault. We've just been waiting for him for 15 minutes. Why have you waiting for him? I don't know. He refuses to tell us why he's late. um if anyone wanted to say go to his channel and comment, why were you late for Settler's most recent stream, why were you late for the Zoomer stream, tell us why you were late for the Zoomer stream. If anyone wants to at him on Twitter, if anyone wants to send him DMs asking him why he was late for the Zoomer stream, I'm not telling you should do that. I'm just saying that's a thing you could do. So consider doing that if you want. Not saying you should. Just consider it, because 21st has he hasn't told us yet. And this whole opening today is going to be about 21st, because this stream actually is 21st's idea. This wasn't my idea. I'm not the one that wanted to do a stream on Zoomers. I'm happy to, obviously. I'm not saying it's bad. All I'm saying is 21st is the one that desperately wanted to do this stream. Ryan Turnip can attest to this. He knows that months ago, I think you said back in July, 21st was messaging you and begging you to do this stream.
September.
Hey, I was going to lie to make it sound more extreme. But thanks, Ryan. Okay, September. So we can attest the fact that this has been 21st project, and when it finally comes, when we're finally ready, he's late for 15 minutes. So again, I'm not saying that you have to go to his channel. I'm just saying that's a thing you could do. Now I am saying you should unsubscribe from him. That's a thing you definitely should do. But I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should make comments or you should DM him or whatever. Totally up to you. Also, on that same topic, I want to say that I'm starting to feel like I'm the minion here. 21st, famously, what most people know him by is 21st Minion. You might notice that's not actually what's on the screen, but I think that's what people generally refer to him as 21st Minion, because he's famously my minion. But he's the one trying to force me around it, force me through these streams, forcing me to wait 15 minutes for him. I will have to reconsider my relationship with him. We'll have to consider banning him for future streams, because I can't allow the minion situation to be reversed. So yeah, just again, feel free to comment below if you think 21st should be banned from these streams. Totally up to you. But 21st, this is your stream, so why don't you introduce us?
Well, that was rather stochastic, wasn't it? No,
there was nothing there that wasn't serious.
Yes, but it was stochastic. But anyway, yeah, it's very true. Giant L, but I still won't talk about why. But yes, today is the Zoomer stream. It's about our brothers and sisters, the Zoomer generation, generally aged, what do we say, like 16 to maybe early 20s? You guys would agree to that?
We were talking about this earlier. I said 2001 is the cutoff date for births for Zoomers. That's how old they can be.
Boom, boom. So that's like 21 or 20. Wow. Yeah, so there's obviously several issues that the Zoomers face that are probably quite different than all other generations. I was really inspired by Turnip's video on this that he made. I think it was his first video describing it, how there's this irony culture. Every meta narrative has been broken down so that there's no purpose at all. There's not even any purpose to even rebel. Terrible online disgusting crap that just changes people's psychologies fundamentally, and a number of other things. So we'll be getting into that today. But yeah, I mean, I'm on thin ice. I might not make it. At least with Settler. I don't know. I might survive otherwise. But so any opening thoughts on that?
It's much worse than you just made it out to be. That was a very good underselling of the issue.
Yeah, before we get into it, like, the decline of Rome from, like, Turnip's perspective, like that picture of Rome collapsing is Turnip's perspective, but Settler seemed to disagree on this, where it's like the bad stories that you were talking about sounded exaggerated to him and sounded like they might not be true.
So I anticipated this happening. I have a roommate in the other room that saw the exact same things that I did and other things, because he was in the public school system for longer than I did. He pulled me aside after the first stream that I did with AA on the topic, and he said that I actually undersold a few of the issues. So
Yeah, I suppose, like, I'm not accusing you of lying. I want to be, clear on that from the start. But and for context for the for the viewers, what we're referring to is a live stream that I think I was on too. But that was on AA's channel where Turnip was going over um the disgusting things that were going on in high school, and it seemed a bit extreme to me. And the reason I feel that way, and by extreme I mean I do not think that it's as bad as he described. The reason I feel that way is are you state doxed? Is it public information what state you're from?
I am in Oklahoma. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I knew that, but I wasn't sure if that was public information. But yeah, so you're from Oklahoma. You're from a pretty conservative state. I'm not province doxed, but I'm Canadian. I live in a fairly liberal area. I mean, most cities in Canada are pretty liberal. Even the cities in conservative provinces are pretty liberal. So I'm from a fairly liberal area. I'm from Canada. I went to high school a few years before you, but not that many years. And was it bad? Yeah, but like I don't know. I don't think it was anywhere remotely close to what you described. So it's hard for me to imagine that it really can be quite as bad as you described. I'm not saying it's not bad. I mean, I do remember bad things.
I understand.
But it just the stories you were telling seemed a bit extreme.
The high school that I went to, I think even 5 years beforehand, if anything on that list had happened, I think it would have been probably a statewide scandal. It severely declined at about the point where my age range got there, which is about mid-Zoomer. So we're not the old, but we aren't the youngest Zoomers in there. We're about right in the middle, the quintessential Zoomers. The older Zoomers, I think, have it together a bit more. Not substantially much more, but I don't think they've reached the levels of depravity that a lot of the people in my specific category have, or even some of the younger ones. God knows what it's going to be like when they get there. They still had at least a semblance of like the vestiges of the societies that came before them. They had just from like a time perspective, they had a lot more elderly people around than I did when I got there, just because they had all mostly died off. Just as an example.
Okay. Well, and to respond to this comment, the Canadian calls me the Canadian Zoomer. I'm not totally convinced I am a Zoomer. I think me and Elliot might be boomers. I'm unsure about this. But I feel like we might be the boomer representation on today's stream.
I can prove I'm a boomer, right? That's my point.
Yeah, exactly. Based. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, I suppose a definition of boomer and Zoomer is necessary. Now, first, so we're clear, in case there's any misunderstandings here, there are only two generations alive today: boomer and Zoomer. There's nothing else. Anyone that tells you there's another generation that exists is wrong. So me and Elliot and everyone here are definitely one of those two. Are we boomers though? I don't know. That's something we can. That is something we can determine today. Who here are Zoomers? Who here are boomers? Perhaps even some of the younger among us could be boomers. Perhaps boomerism is so spiritual that it defies age categories. I don't know. But yes. So I'm not, just to answer that. I'm not convinced that I'm not convinced that I am a Zoomer. But we'll have to discover that in the stream. But Ryan, why don't you go over some of the more extreme examples? I don't want to go through this like 2 hours like you did before, but just list off a few of the more extreme examples for us.
Should we give a sin warning before we start that?
Yeah, no, I mean, unironically, having listened to this before, this could be scandalizing to some of the audience.
Maybe tone it down a little bit. Like, I'm quite sensitive to that sort of stuff, like, unironically.
So, I'll just pick through, like, the things that were, like, the specific things that were kind of one-time-ish, and not just the proliferation, if that's all right? Or do you want the generalities?
I mean, whatever you think would be representative.
Okay, so, open polyamory, there's no concept of, like, strict monogamy. That's out the window. There's open fornication in public areas, and that's very common. Complete inversion of the sexes. So men are taught and act very submissive and not as manly. Women try to become men. That's the result of your typical feminism arguments.
Okay. That's enough at least for now. So okay, so the first one you said, what was the first one? No monogamy.
Yeah, open polyamory. It's a lot more common and normalized.
Okay, yeah, I mean, okay. I don't know. Perhaps some of this could be just that I was always such a nerd that I wasn't exposed to this stuff. It's quite possible. I'm willing to admit that that could be a reason for why I was more isolated from these things. Um, I can't remember though, looking back, anyone ever explicitly being polyamorous in any interactions I was aware of in high school.
Well,
No, I'm sure there
don't
were
think-
people. I'm not saying there weren't.
Don't
Yeah,
think too formal here. It's just even things that aren't. You don't have to go out and say I am polyamorous. It's more just people will openly cheat on each other, and there won't be any shame associated with it. So
Yeah, no,
whereas
but I
before-
do I can at least vaguely think of the opposite of that, of people being upset about cheating and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that I
no.
remember. So
mostly
how
gone.
common was that? I don't know. But so what was the second example?
The second example was public fornication. Very
Okay,
common. You can.
I definitely do not remember anything like that. Granted,
Oh,
I
really?
never went to high school parties. And
This wasn't parties. This was in the building itself.
well, I mean, at the school I went to, they had parties at the school.
Okay.
They were like technically no drink parties, but like people always smuggled in tons of beer. But yeah, so I don't know what that was like at parties, but I certainly never heard of anything like that at the school. And what was the third example?
I gave a complete inversion of the sexes.
Right, yeah, and again, this is another thing where I don't know. Was there some of that? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, two things I definitely remember. Was earlier when I first went to high school. One thing that was really common is like basically all the girls claimed to be bisexual. And my read of the situation is that they were lying because I never saw one actually like with a girlfriend.
Right, yes.
If they were with someone romantically, publicly, it was always a boy.
Yes,
it was
that's
just
very
like
typical. Yeah.
Trendy.
and then near the end of high school, it was the same thing, but with transgenderism, where where it wasn't like all the girls were like bisexual. It seemed like it was just all of them, except for like a couple Christian girls. Yeah, that's probably an exaggeration, but it was pretty common. But with transgenderism, when I was leaving high school, it wasn't as common. I mean, it wasn't usually like transgenderism wasn't like going to the opposite gender, but it was some Tumblr gender. But that was quite common too by the time I was leaving high school, where I don't think was really I remember when I started high school, not in school, but just from interactions online. That when I started high school, it was actually still quite common online to have leftists claim that that the transgender stuff was just a right-wing scare tactic and no one actually supported transgenderism. And it was obviously a lie even then. But it wasn't. I don't. I certainly when I started high school did not remember anyone claiming to be transgender or any sort of weird gender thing. But so we actually have a Zoomer expert here, a Zoomer high school expert here, Hartsy Protsy. So I want to ask you about these. Have you seen any of those three things that Ryan identified?
Yeah, I was actually waiting for a pause to speak up and say that I can directly attest to the fact, as someone who is still living through the nightmare of public high school, about all the degeneracy that goes on within high schools, within high school circles. Yeah, everything that Ryan over here is saying is pretty accurate. I mean, and I don't know if it's gotten worse because obviously he's from he's far past high school and I'm still in it. But
I think it's only his first year out of high school.
I have just a few months out.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, so it's the same. Yeah, it's bad. It is very bad. I am honestly sometimes sickened when I see the type of things that people get up to. It makes me upset that my generation is like this. That it's almost like there's no sense of morality, no common morals. It's messed up. And
Boom, seller wrecked with facts and logic.
I can chime in here a little bit regarding the polyamorous thing. You're absolutely right. Open, and obviously, like you said, it depends on how you define polyamory. It's not people openly saying, "Yeah, I'm in an open relationship," but there's no real loyalty or dedication to a single type of, I guess, bond between.
And there are
similar
still open
people.
relationships that
And
just
of course,
aren't common.
Right, they aren't common. They're becoming more common. And then,
I mean, yeah, I guess one thing I can attest to from my high school days is I remember one thing that was common was people very rapidly going from one relationship to another, like within the space of weeks.
and that is polyamory as well. That is.
Yeah. It's not like, technically polyamory, but it's like basically the same thing.
Well, even if we were to disregard that, like there might be like a few secularists that think, oh, well, that's not polyamory. Like there are people that will just, while still supposedly in a commitment, just openly and fragrantly dismiss that and just go with someone else.
I can think of a person that I've spoken to today who is currently in a relationship with a man who has cheated on her multiple times, and they're living together, and they're still like, and she's just like, yeah, it sucks, it's bad, it's not right, but it is what it is.
I don't know. I'd be skeptical that's a new thing, though. I mean, this is the sort of thing I feel like I've heard stories of going back decades, hearing hearing women in relationships that are obviously terrible, where like the boyfriend or the husband or whoever cheats on them constantly. But
I don't think this is a new thing either, because this girl that I'm talking about is actually 26 years old.
So I mean, at least what you described there, that seems like a common phenomenon.
The thing that's new, settler, is not the fact that it's happening; it's the fact that people accept it and normalize it. This is considered very standard, and there's no social shame or humiliation that goes along with it. Not even the supposedly fundamentalists down here in Oklahoma. We're a very Baptist state. Not even the fundamentalists talk about this anymore. It's just accepted.
Yeah, how much of this is just good old-fashioned hypergamy? That's like.
Yeah, well, that's Charlemagne's input. I suppose I should read this out, since I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this while they're playing video games. FYI, this is from Charlemagne. FYI, I tell turnip story to my millennial friends, and they don't believe it either. So yeah, I am still skeptical, but getting the attestation from several people here on the panel does make me take it a bit more seriously.
Can I chime in a little bit, because I feel like there's something that needs to be said, or a few things that need to be said. So, what we've discussed here generally are sins of the flesh. We've discussed fornication, as has been mentioned, and other things as well. And while these are bad, these are something that have been very, very common at certain points throughout history. So, for example, before the Protestant Reformation in Germany, a lot of priests had their concubines.
Yes.
You had a similar practice, as far as I remember, in medieval Spain. The laws around fornication were not that present. They weren't acted out. In fact, I actually have a moral manual by an 18th century moral theologian called St. Alphonsus Liguori that has to address concubinage explicitly. Now, what I mean to say by this is obviously not to apologize for the sexual behavior that we're experiencing now. It's obviously in a lot of ways more extreme. But I want to say that it really isn't that unprecedented.
Well,
that's the first thing. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I actually think that having these kinds of sins being the predominant problem is actually, in some ways, a better problem to have than some of the stuff that I've at least heard from people who are older than us. For example, I'm involved with the synod for the Roman Catholic Church at my local parish. We're doing this worldwide synod, and we're asking questions about how to proceed with the church in future. And this has led to me interacting with a number of elderly women and asking them about how things have changed and understanding how the parish works. And one of them, this woman who was in her 80s, she described how when she used to go to the Catholic Church in Britain, the Anglican kids, I think it was the Anglican kids anyway, they used to throw stones at them, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is that my own family have described how the Catholics would come down, well, some of the Catholics would come down to the Church of England schools with knives, right? This, of course, still happens, but what I'm trying to get at is that the species of sin is different, because people being more feminized in some places are, less willing. The sins that we're seeing now are fundamentally different. There's a lot less arrogance now. There's a lot less anger. It's less accepted, at least in the middle classes. Like we say, people think nowadays that Zoomers are effeminate. Now, there's a great advantage here. Because with pride, you'll never repent. With pride and anger, irascible sins are worse, precisely, well, for many reasons, but precisely because these people are unwilling to repent. Now, sins of the flesh, regardless of how we may think that these people who are engaging in these things don't know that they're wrong, but really they're living dreadful lives. I'm sure that people know, from their own experiences how horrible sins of the flesh actually are, how internally disruptive they are, not just to the frame of mind, but just to the way you approach things. You've got people who are caged up in sins that make them more predisposed to humility, which actually gives us an opening here. We can exploit this, and not only that, these people aren't anti-religious like the Gen X people or the boomers were. We've got people who do not know anything about Christianity. They don't know anything about Catholicism. They don't know anything about Aristotle or Plato. And you've got these people who are highly depressed, have aimless lives, and they have no sensible philosophy. Like, these people don't even think there's such a thing as a human nature in a lot of cases. So, we have an opening here. That's all I wanted to say.
If I can tackle some of that, my actual list has a few more points on it. I like, just from the glance that I just took, I saw 6 or so that had nothing to do with sins of the flesh that are even worse, arguably. You made the point that was completely wrong, that Zoomers are anti-religion, and that is nowhere near the truth.
No, I didn't.
Well,
no, that's not what he said.
No, I didn't. I
You
actually
said
said
they
the
were
exact
like-
opposite. I said the exact
You said-
opposite. I said the boomer generation was when the apostasy began.
Yes.
Right? The breaking away from traditional religion. Now, you have Zoomers now in a position where they have no idea about religion, so
Well,
they're
no.
more open to it.
No, that's not what it is. It's not that they have no idea about it, it's that they have no interest in it. They can see churches on the roadside and all of that, and that's what they see, and they just don't care about it.
Yeah, but they think they're the funny houses where the boomers go. Like, that's all they think.
Well, no, for
They don't
a
know what
lot
it
of
is.
for a lot of them, it's the places that they were forced to go when they were like 3 years old by their grandparents. And then when their grandparents stopped, that was the end of it.
The Zoomers.
Renaissance. I think your more anglosphere life experience is going to be different here because
European. Yeah.
Yeah, European. Well, yeah, I don't consider America anglosphere anymore, to be honest. But but I think it's because being in Britain, the apostasy was deep and clear and happened a bit earlier, and especially with the boomers. It happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Everything when it happened a bit later in America, and with America, we're a bunch of slippery liars. So it's like not explicit. More of still this cultural identification, when even in Britain it's like attending and pretending to believe this stuff is not really as normal as it is here in America. So that might be the kind of cultural difference that
I would also say
them.
I would also say that it's a much more nuanced theological issue than whether or not you stand in a church for an hour a week. I would say that a lot of the American congregations died at the beginning of the 20th century with the triumphs of modernism. The idea that truth can just change. Like the Northern Baptist Convention embraced this, from what I understand. The Southern ones didn't. But the whole theological decline that has gone on, I mean, it's gone on for centuries, right? But it's been particularly palpable in the 20th century.
So-
Well,
That-
I don't want to get off. We shouldn't get too far off topic into this. I think what the thing about Zoomers in the church is, like you're saying, is that, and it's just maybe a little bit of fence sitting, because I agree with both of you in a way. They are deeply indoctrinated with anti-religious, propaganda, I guess. So they don't like organized religion, but they are very spiritual, and they have a lot of questions. From my experience, this is what they say. This is what polls say. This is what personal anecdotes say as well. So I think that there's a disconnect there. Like, I'll talk to people that I know, and they like the idea of God. They like the Bible, maybe even the Bible. They won't like it when they begin to expose themselves to the truth because they're not in Christ. So they'll be repulsed or accept it. But they don't like the church. They don't like what it is they hear when they go and stand in the church for 1 hour. They don't know any of the deep concepts about it either, but because of the very shallow, anti-religious propaganda that people have been fed, they are skeptical to it.
If you stop a Zoomer on the street and you ask them why they don't go to church or anything like that, they're not going to say I dislike the church because X, Y, and Z reasons from some sort of propaganda. It's just going to be because they don't want to. They want to sleep in. They don't have any critiques of Christianity because they don't open books. Generation Z has the.
I disagree. People have
Completely
no,
disagree.
of course. Yeah, that's not my experience. No, obviously, in this you can only speak from experience. But when I ask people why they don't go to church, a lot of them say, "Oh, I really should get back into it." I'm from a southern, culturally Christian town, or that's where I'm at right now and where I'm from. But there's a lot of oh, I just don't want to, which is what you are. Like, okay, you just want to sleep and you just want to play video games, just stayed up too late Saturday night. That's real. But a lot of people do have deep criticisms of personal experiences they've had with like Christians, specifically hypocritical, judgmental. They make me feel bad. It's
The last
stuff like
generation
that.
definitely did, but that hasn't really translated to the Zoomers. I don't know where you guys are to where you have Zoomers that are reading things and they can actually tell you, I don't like the church because they don't hold to this doctrine or that doctrine. They
that's not what I
contradict
said.
themselves here or here. The Zoomers don't know that stuff.
I
don't
mean,
need to know it. It still has a
my
cultural
experience
impact.
getting answers like the church hates gay people or evolution or stuff like that are like pretty common answers.
That is the very shallow propaganda. So it's not doctrinal disagreements, but it is very like, this is what I was taught in public school about like the KKK, and the KKK was Christian, so Christians are racist or something like that. Something very stupid.
And once again, I've never heard of a Zoomer saying that they don't want to go to church because it's racist or something like that. They just don't want to go.
Well, yeah, because they don't believe. That's what I would think they'd say. They'd say, I don't go to church because I'm not Christian.
Well,
Like, I
no,
think
it's that they don't say that either. They say I don't want to go because it's boring. I want to sleep in. I want to do other things.
I
Like there's a
disagree. Maybe this is cultural context.
Zoomers don't act off of like a conviction. They act off of they act off of a instinct or off of a stimulation.
I mean, like, I'm very close with a Zoomer. My brother's one, and he'd certainly.
Yeah,
doesn't
I am a
act that way.
Zoomer.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah, so I mean,
that
I don't know
has
what you're
yet
trying
to
to out
be
Zoomer me
determined,
here.
Elliot.
Sorry, what did you say, Settler?
That has yet to be determined whether or not you're a Zoomer.
I'm claiming it. I can determine who I want, who I am. Okay, like, aren't we the identity generation where we can just identify whatever we want? So I'm identifying as a Zoomer.
Yeah, what's that quote from Justice Kennedy? At the heart of liberty is the ability for man to determine his own conception of the universe. That was his justification for, I don't know if it was abortion or if it was Lawrence v. Texas, one of those two things. But yes, I know. Yeah, I'm going to do a quick commercial break here to do super chats from Cringe Walker. For $2, for real, totally so true, Cringe Walker. Your next one has a swear in it, so I'm not going to read it.
Nice.
No cap for another $2.
Oh, sorry.
Yikes for another $2. And sheesh. Thank you very much, Cringe Walker. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were done. I will say this in regards to what Ryan is saying. There are a lot more people, Zoomers specifically, who are apathetic towards like church and Christianity and beliefs and having belief structures because they don't really think about convictions. Like you said, I don't think you need to read a book per se to, have convictions.
Or anything.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. They don't think really about anything. But I would say there's a study combination, whereas if you go further back into like what we would typically describe as millennials, which evidently that doesn't exist as a generation, or boomers.
No, it doesn't.
There is a lot of like, maybe some petty justifications for why they don't like church. Kind of like Charlemagne just said, yeah, I know several Zoomers who actively dislike Christianity for reasons, though, but most just don't care. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I find it very hard to believe that a generation that is characterized by constant activism for things like climate change and for LGBT
That's
issues
not the
has
Zoomers.
no
Those
conviction.
are the millennials.
Well, I don't know about
They're
that.
at university right now, so like, who's doing the protesting?
It's a small subset of people, mostly, college non-apathetic females that are doing that. It's not the whole the larger context of the Zoomers is definitely this kind of apatheism to older religion, and then also maybe even a little to wokeism.
I just filmed a mob on my university this last week, and the only people that were actually there participating and not just spectating were people definitely on the older side and professors. And the other side was like some old guy that just walked onto campus to do street preaching. So, like, in my experience, even here in a mob, it wasn't the actual Zoomers that were really doing too terribly much.
Were you a part of any of the, in maybe perhaps after some tragic events, the walkouts of school, the protests in schools, like high schools that Zoomers participated in? No, but I mean those are a thing. I mean, my nephew is in school.
Those
right
are
now.
a thing, yes. And then
I mean, my experience, there weren't any. There were walkouts when I went to school, not really for the same things in the States, but there are still walkouts. In my experience, the reason most people participate in them is just it's an excuse to get off.
Yes, exactly.
Right, exactly.
And then,
with that said, though, having been in, having been to high school, having been to university, that type of stuff, I definitely think that most people are left wing in some sort of sense, but I think there's only like a sort of ideological core that really care about it. It's just for the rest of people, it's just the accepted opinion, so you're going to go with whatever the accepted opinions are.
Yeah, and that's where the idea of like, oh, they've been just so overwhelmed by mainstream culture about anti-Christian propaganda, that where we see that, like you said, most people are just inherently the cultural muse is left wing, so they're more left wing. So that's where we see that come out if you really dig into it. But I'd actually agree with Ryan in saying that, yeah, probably most people just don't are apathetic towards Christianity and religion in general. But they do want to hire spiritualism, though, don't they? They are always making up things.
well,
would you say?
Heartsy, as our Zoomer expert here, since you're the only one still in high school, what would you like to say about this? Like, how actually interested in politics or religion do you think most Zoomers are?
Well, not at all, really. I think that they're just going about their days, not just doing whatever they want. They don't. It's not like they're being driven by a desire to be anti-religious or something like that. It's just that's what they want to do. These actions they commit, they just want to do it. And I honestly,
would you describe? Sorry to interrupt there, but would you describe their religion, their spirit, more as just like a spirit of the appetite? Not really any profound religion, but just a spirit of the appetite.
Honestly, yeah. But another thing I think is, I think a lot of it has to do with the parenting. I think that they weren't taught traditional values. I was lucky enough to have two very traditional parents who taught me very traditional values, like respect your elders and such and such. But I don't think these other kids were taught this. I don't think these other students were taught this, and therefore they just they don't act according to those values.
If you want to know why a Zoomer does something, you can boil it down to what is the impulse or what is the stimulation that the Zoomer will get from it. If you try to look at a Zoomer and try to reason out why they acted the way they did, and you start with first principles or convictions or any belief at all, you're not going to reach the correct conclusion. Because that's not how Zoomers operate.
Do you think that's true with most people?
Excuse me.
No.
No, because if you talk to millennials, if you even interact with them, they're out being raging communists, and as terrible as that is, that's a conviction. The Zoomers don't have that.
But there are exceptions, right?
Yeah, of course there's exceptions.
You're
and then I have friends. And you can't brand as generation 100% of these people act this way. It's just when you see the majority of them and you have to live around them for who knows how long. A lot of this stuff rings true for, I'd be willing to bet, 98% of them.
Okay. Can I just ask a question? Isn't the pursuit of pleasure in itself a pursuit of the good, and therefore there's kind of a principled reasoning right there?
I didn't say pleasure. I said stimulation or impulse.
Same thing. They wouldn't do it unless they perceive some good in it.
Well, a lot of them self-harm. They don't see good in it, and they know it's not good if you tell them to stop.
Yeah, but the thing is that sorrow, when habitually done, creates a certain pleasure to it, right? But there is a habituation of the passions of the emotions, wherein someone can get a real rise out of getting angry. Someone can get and I think a lot of people who are watching this may even be caught in this, right? A lot of people get a pleasure out of getting angry. They watch, rage constantly. Same with sorrow. Same with just straight up pleasure. Same with daring. Same with any other passion.
If ever they get anything out of that, it rapidly diminishes after about the second or third time, much like any sort of drug taking would do. You get pleasure out at the first or second time, and then after that it becomes crushing and sorrowful, and that's how you get the suicide rate as it is.
Yes, but then in that case, then why don't people just stop their addictions then?
Well,
because they're effeminate. We've been over this. They're drugged up on all these stimulations, including
there's
the
that,
internet.
but also there's also the main point is that, well, they kill themselves. That's a very permanent way of solving their addictions. In the case of self-harm, anyone that's addicted to it, they aren't addicted to it for too terribly long.
I mean, there's plenty of women who self-harm and they survive, and they get something out of that. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
They do, yes, they do get something out of it, but that misses the point entirely, is that it doesn't usually last too terribly long when looking at their lifespan and they're promptly about to ending it.
Well, not with just self-harm, with
yeah,
suicide,
I mean,
sure.
most people that attempt suicide or people that self-harm don't actually succeed. I mean, Elliot, I believe the statistic is about like 1 in 20 suicide attempts are successful for men, about 1 in 25 for women. That's just vaguely off the top of my head, but I know exactly what it is, but it's something generally like that. But Elliot, I'm not really sure what your point is.
My point
yes, of course,
is...
let me frame my question first. Yes, of course, these people feel like they're getting something out of it, or they wouldn't do it. But isn't that true for all human behavior?
What my overarching point is that human beings, by their nature, pursue what they perceive to be good. Now, this doesn't have to be in Aristotle. This doesn't have to be in Aquinas. This doesn't have to be in anyone. This can just be lizard brain reasoning. It's still in a sense principle, because you can unpack it because of the nature of the human mind. You can unpack it into a certain set of premises. You can unpack it into a syllogism if you'd like. That's my point. But my larger points, we're talking about suicides, we're talking about depression and things like this. Some people actually enjoy these things because of the habituation that it brings on them. They might not feel that, because, of course, the feeling of sorrow is not something that we contend with pleasure, but it's on the same spectrum. It's the pleasure of the habit, just like any other habit. Some people get pleasure out of anger, some people get pleasure out of drinking, even though they're addicted and they know it'll kill them.
Yes, that is very true. So if you are going to take away any sort of connotations along with they are seeking good, then you can't then try to make any inference out of this. They are seeking what they perceive to be good in their situation. That is very true. Hence why I said that they are seeking impulse, or they are acting off of impulse and off of stimulation.
But this isn't different necessarily from being principled per se.
No, it
because
is.
They're following the principle of pleasure. I mean, you could say this for Epicurus.
No, but that's not a principle. Like, there's a distinction between principle and impulse. People will act off of principle. They see it as good. It is a cognitive thing. If you just act off of what is good based off of stimulation and impulse, you no longer have that cognitive element to it. You become animals.
I completely disagree.
Yes,
Don't you have to... Can I just say, you can have, say, a passion beforehand. Say, you're in a situation where you want to drink the bottle of alcohol because you're addicted. There's always a reasoning process that goes before I'm going to have this alcohol. And it's the same with any other behavior, just like this.
There is a reasoning process, but you don't necessarily have to think it through. It's an impulse.
Oh, sure. I'm not saying that they're philosophical masterminds. I'm saying that they're certainly reasoning where they're going in a lot of cases.
Well, no.
They're
but
not animals.
No, they aren't reasoning. They are acting off of impulse. That's what I am saying. They don't think, I want to do this. They just do it in most cases. That's why if you ever ask a Zoomer why they do something... If you ever ask a Zoomer why they do something...
Autism alert, referee coming in here. I think there's a compromise position / you guys are somewhat talking past each other a little bit. You might like him because he's a classical liberal turn-up. John Stuart Mill, just the great thinker. I think they're actually following their principles.
Me like that again.
I think they're being very principled because they're following his philosophy of the pleasure principle, the greatest good for the greatest pleasure for the greatest number. It's where pleasure becomes principle. It's where that spirit of appetite becomes the whole philosophy of their life. And of course they naturally, you're welcome, Charlene. Of course it naturally converges into just their basic instinct and everything. But Elliot's right about this. It is essentially meaning the same thing. Like their principles. You're right. Their principles have been basened and reverted down into like almost the animalistic instinctual level. I would completely agree with that, and thus I think the chasm between you two is resolved.
Well, no, I disagree, because I think that waters down the whole point of a principle. Like, if you're just saying anything that you do consistently is a principle, I think that you're losing a great deal of meaning there.
It is the principle of the flesh. Now, well, I wanted to, if it's okay to segue, I was, I'm very satisfied with Heartsy. He seems like he's probably my favorite guest today, for sure. But going off of what he was saying about they don't have good, parents giving them good values and everything, I don't think it's just that. I think it's essentially that Zoomers don't have parents, and there's these several factors that are contributing to them being psychologically deformed. I mean, I feel it in myself a little bit, and I'm sure we all do have that. But this, I want to emphasize, and maybe we can look into this, like, psychological deformation that they have, where they're unsocialized, that it's harder for them to interact with people in real life because they're so extremely online. It's harder for them to experience empathy or to have that kind of happiness that you have by being intimate with another person in real life, because they didn't have that parenting and that that early life period where you receive loving touches from your parents. That's what psychologically builds a person up early on. And when it's not there, you're kind of messed up. And so I wanted to see what your guys' thoughts are on all these factors contributing to the Zoomer psyche.
I'll let you guys go first this time.
Not everyone all at once.
Carlson.
David, what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts on the Zoomer psyche and family affection. Well, I'd say it's obviously lacking, right? Like it's not there. There is no physical bond with people anymore, and we're going to see this in what they're calling Gen Alpha, which is just another form of boomer, and then that is just the iPad kids, right? They're just putting iPads in their faces. So I was talking to someone at work today, and she was like, "Yeah, I have." She's pregnant. She has 2 kids already, and she's like, "Yeah, we love screens at my home. We just use screens. More screen time, better. I like watching TV. My kids kids have their iPads and everything." And I'm just like, do you guys do anything? Do you guys play sports or go on walks? Or, what's going on here? Where is the physical bond? And it's not there. And of course that degrades someone's I guess social skills, and also their more deeply, I'd say it degrades the compassion and I guess what is the word I'm looking for here? Their ability to feel empathy, maybe, or sympathy, and be compassionate or know how to act towards people. And the internet is there's a barrier there. You can't learn things like that. I don't think you can learn much from the internet unless you're reading off of it. I don't think that listening to stuff does a whole lot of good, which might actually hurt our industry a little bit more than I shouldn't have said that. Frick.
No. I mean, I affirm this. I mean, I'm not saying you can't listen to these podcasts and stuff. I'm not saying you should never play video games. If you're going to play some video games today, listening to a Settlers Limp podcast is probably better than listening to like a makeup tutorial or whatever normies do. But
don't forget ASMR.
Settler, how could you do a makeup tutorial while playing a video game?
I don't know. I mean, don't you ever listen to things not because you actually want the content of the video, but just because you enjoy that channel?
Oh yeah, I used to do that a huge amount, but
I do that with the one.
Yeah, so I imagine girls probably do that with makeup tutorials. They listen to them not because they actually want to use the tutorial, but just because they want to hear the voice they're familiar with.
You never watched...
It's a replacement for human conversation, which they don't have most of the day because they're so intensely online.
If you want to watch this stuff occasionally, that's fine. But the saturation is insane, and I'm happy to tell my audience. Probably the majority of my audience watches too much of this stuff. I'm happy to tell you that this is the one time I'm going to tell you don't watch. Now, I want to be clear: watch as much Settlers Lament as you can, but cut out other channels.
And cut out like TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. I mean, that's even like talking now taking it from kids, young kids to Zoomers, I guess, people our age. And this like TikTok stuff is absolutely horrible. I can notice a very steep incline in my ability to focus on something when I delete social media apps, when I take a step back from Twitter and I've never really had TikTok, but sometimes I'll find myself scrolling through Instagram Reels, and it just like destroys me and my mental like cognitive abilities. So I know that it's not good from personal experience, and I think that we can see that reflected in the generation as well. Like we are, and this is probably why, as Ryan kept referring to earlier, it's probably why we don't read books. Like people just can't sit down and focus for a long enough amount of time to actually think things through, to be alone in their own room. If you've seen the Spotify warps that are coming out, and I guess now they're having like YouTube music warps as well, or raps or whatever it is. All of these, like just listening to music for over like 100 hours in the year, like just an insane amount of time. People just don't know how to sit in silence anymore, right? I think that's a Zoomer phenomenon.
They never could.
So were you gonna go?
No, I mean, yes, Elliot, your phone is. I was going to ask you to show your phone before you did it yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is the most based thing I've seen all day. I unfortunately do have a smartphone, but one thing I'm grateful for is I did not have a smartphone until I was 18. So I don't think I'm as addicted to it as most people are from my generation. But I would. Matt Fradd's actually did a very good video, or he's done several very good videos on this, where he's talked about alternatives to smartphones, or even ways that you can have a smartphone but reduce the smart capabilities, so you're not always scrolling. That definitely, like social media, shorts, all those types of things are just absolute killers to your attention span. If you don't have a very strong control over it, it's something you need to get out of your life immediately.
Like I'll speak about my dumb phone usage, right? I started using a dumb phone just before the pandemic kicked off, so I think it was like December 2019, because I was spending 3-4 hours, watching YouTube on my phone. And I thought, well, why am I wasting all this time? And so I switched to a smart dumb phone even, and I really haven't regretted it. The only thing that I would say is that it's probably worth having a smartphone just so you can do things like configure things like WhatsApp on your laptop or something. That's the one. That's like those sorts of things are like the one reason why you should have.
Do you use like Google Voice though?
What?
Google Voice to get a phone number, smartphone, or I don't know how it works. So it's my bad. It's my tech boomer coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the things that Matt Fradd has shown is there are several like fake smartphones where they look like a smartphone, but they're not really a smartphone that you can get. So they don't have all this functionality, but they but they still have, they're still touchscreen and stuff like that. And they have some limited.
They're called
functionality.
Wise phones.
Yeah. Well, that's one particular brand. I think there's several different brands. But yeah.
Actually, if there are any really serious tech people on here, one thing I'd recommend doing if you have the time is to build your own phone with an ESP430, right? Like if you want to do some sort of cool tech project or something like that, you can build, I suspect, a fully functioning phone with just like a cheap board you can get from China for like £2 or $2.50. But that's a difficult thing. Just a recommendation that pops into my head.
So on one side of the spectrum, we were talking about how they can't stand silence at all, right? They can't stand the basic silence of reading a book. I think David Carlson said that. And then on the other side, we've been covering the extreme overstimulation they have. I would describe it always as like a, especially since they're extremely online, it's this half stimulation where it's not really very meaningful whenever they receive stimulation from their phones or wherever. Like scrolling through your phone is like, it's it keeps you on there, it keeps you doing it, but it's not really like a euphoric thing to do. It's just kind of this basic base level buzz. So they're always used to having just this base level buzz that isn't really, that doesn't allow for a silent contemplation, and then doesn't allow for the meaningful, real deal, fulfilling thing, like, you know, getting a hug or whatever. So that's one aspect. Sorry, what?
I was going to say, if I could get my position on this, because I just did a video on this whole topic.
Sure.
With the Zoomers, something else that you see, especially in regards to families, we mentioned at the top of this specific issue. It's completely been disintegrated, and if you even compare our parenting habits to that of 200 years ago, let alone even, you can go back, say, like 70 years ago, and it's still night and day. There's been a lot that's changed, and also the role of the church has also failed. That's not saying the church has failed. That's saying that the people in the church, the supposed shepherds that you were supposed to have, a lot of them dropped the ball in the last 100 years or so. They lost their power that they had over society and over, you know, people at large. They stopped shepherding people in the 1960s. They completely lost the battle. The parents, you know, the West, or I say the West, England, Denmark, the Lowlands, and anywhere else that comes from them, you have the nuclear family system. And right now in the modern day, that just means you kick your children out when they reach 18, and the cycle keeps going forever, and then you like barely see them again afterwards. Once upon a time, the nuclear family meant that the parents and their children live in a house and they are nearby the rest of their family. So you have that extended family, even though they aren't living in the same abode, that will help with raising their children. They would pass on stories, they would pass on family history. You would get that connection between the infant and their great-grandparents even, that you no longer get today, because children are viewed as a liability ultimately. That's a very destructive thing that's going on right now, and it's what the Zoomers were raised in. You know, one of the first generations to be raised by pure modernity, where, you know, children are viewed as liabilities, they're viewed as money sinks, they're, you know, the more children you have, the less things you can do, the less material you have. It's going to be that's the most destructive thing that you need to pinpoint down and talk about if you want to know, you know, in regards to parenting, in regards to why the Zoomers are so messed up. It's going to be that sentiment there.
Yeah, almost like. Just go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go, Carlson.
All right, yeah, like almost children are a thing to be done away with when you have them as well, which is where the just put an iPhone in their face comes from, right? They're a problem. They ask me questions, well, that's bothersome. Let me just give them a phone to distract them. They can watch Baby Shark or Coco Melon for hours upon end, and I'm now an uncle multiple times over, and I can see the effects. Some of my I guess nieces or nephews were a little bit older. I'm the youngest, and now I'm seeing some of more nephews and nieces being born more into the now we have technology which is specifically made for young kids. Like there's always been some stuff like the leapfrog stuff, but now there's these real iPad type things that are made by Amazon, which are specifically tailored for children. And I'm seeing the difference that it has on my nieces and nephews, like sociability. Like they come over to the house and they just kind of sit there on their iPad. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, well, you have, your grandfather's here, your grandmother is here, your uncle, your aunt, your mom and dad are both here. Like you're not playing, you're just kind of sitting there watching Coco Melon. And I've spoken to my siblings about it, and I'm like, this isn't how you should raise a child, right? Because when you view them as something that is a distraction or a money sink or something that is taking maybe opportunity from you or your personal time, you're like, yeah, it is actually. Like a child is going to take your personal time, but that's a sacrifice when you become a parent that you have to make, that you decide to make. And that's why when you get married in the Bible, there are like a whole nother the commandments that you're commanded to follow in the Bible multiply.
Right.
Like these are the things. This is what happens. Like congratulations, you've now leveled up. You have to make these sacrifices, and that's something that we need to start talking about again.
If I can interject here, I would be even more reactionary, and I wouldn't say that they're sacrifices. Every hour that you have to spend with your children, or that you get to spend with your children, is a blessing. Children are a blessing. That's the blessing.
Yeah, well, when I say sacrifices, that's just miscommunication. I mean, of course, but you're still sacrificing personal time. Like
right.
No, it should be painful. It should be long and painful. But don't look at me like that.
Sorry. Heartsy, was there something you wanted to say? I saw you were unmuted there.
I would like to to speak up and say that while I don't see myself relating to my fellow Zoomers, like spiritually or behaviorally or just what have you, I do find myself unfortunately relating to the issue of short attention spans and overuse of technology, and it's something I really want to curb. Like, I use my phone probably way more than I should. I use my PC way more than I should, and it distracts me from other things I can be doing, like recording things or doing homeworks or what have you. And it's something I want to curb, and I hate that I am unfortunately part of the problem when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. There's actually a super chat that just came in that makes a similar point to this that I want to connect to this. For $5, if you are more based, doesn't the surrounding degeneracy automatically put you at the top of the competence hierarchy, higher attention spans, etc.? Yeah, I mean, that'd be kind of true. But as Heartsea just said, like I have many of these same problems. I do have attention span problems. At least when it comes to phones, like I said, I feel pretty lucky because I didn't get a phone until I was 18. So I don't think I am as addicted to phones as most other people are. But when I'm at my PC, which I spend quite a bit of time at, I do waste quite a bit of time. I want to always be clear, and I've made this point many times, that when I complain about the issues of the modern world, when I complain about this type of stuff, I'm not trying to pretend that I'm completely isolated from it. I experience many of these same problems. I would like to think at least that I'm fighting back against them and that I don't experience them to the same degree as people who just accept all this. But these are problems I think most of us all still deal with to some extent or another. I mean, Elliot just said how he's been trying to clamp down against his phone use by getting that dumb phone. Though the sort of reverse side of this question is, in a certain aspect, I definitely think having a better attention span, not being addicted to screens, that type of stuff, would put you at the top of the competence hierarchy. But there is always the reverse side of that, sort of being isolated from how other people around you are like, can make it more difficult to compete in sort of mainstream sectors of society, which I don't think we necessarily should always view as a bad thing. But it can make you more isolated from normies.
Well, this is a problem that we see in a lot of industries, and I'm taking it to industries. I'm reading a book right now called About Face, which is, I guess, pretty popular because like Jocko Willink talks about it a lot. But this is a gentleman who's a light colonel in the military during Vietnam and that era, and he's experiencing this. He talks about how Douglas MacArthur, or Patton rather, was given a report by an officer who said, "This man during the peacetime army is a disaster, but when war comes along, he will be great." And it was this awareness. So Patton. I just keep saying MacArthur. Patton was tailored for war and combat, and we saw that in his excellence and proficiency on a battlefield in a large scale. But during peacetime, he wasn't tailored for that, right? They were capable of recognizing that. I think to a similar extent, like Zoomers, and I guess when I say Zoomers, I mean autists like us, maybe people who are more into the dissident stuff, people who are socially different because we aren't addicted to phones. We're tailored for something else. Like we have purpose for something else. We have to recognize that, and then we have to play up to our strengths and try to avoid these situations, which are tough, especially if you're someone who's like me, who's very sociable. I like to get out there. I like to talk to people, but I don't necessarily fit in because, maybe I'm too interested in some other things, or my thoughts start to wander if we're talking about like sports or music or Marvel, stuff like this.
Look at us leveraging our strengths right now. Trying to remember what I was going to say about the earlier stuff. It was about the family issues. Yeah, so, both Turnip and...
Sorry, actually, I'd like to do the other super chats before we get back. There's a few others that just one was relevant to the conversation. So Inquisitor Z for $2. I do think that both ideas can be true. I can't remember what exactly that's in reference to, but it was in reference to your
He's
videos.
referring to Elliot's and Ryan's former disagreement about the church and why Zoomers aren't interested in the church.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, thank you very much, Inquisitor. And I have no idea how to pronounce this. Sula for $5. I'm sure I'm going to get made fun of. Oh, Settler can't pronounce the names correctly. Wah. You know, everyone, names become correctly pronounced however I pronounce them. That's how that works. Okay, you know, if someone with more subs than me wants to determine how to correctly pronounce something, that's fine. If you have more subs, it's your prerogative to determine how that word is pronounced. But I have the highest subs here, so it's me who gets to determine that.
Are we considering this cumulatively?
No, not at all. Subscribers are individual.
Across all channels. So I can't.
If we pull our subscribers, we can override Settler on anything here.
No, I mean, okay. Let's do the math. I have 7,500. Let's
the
add it up.
proletariat is rising, guys.
Okay. So what's the super chat? Screens have made everyone boring. No one listens to. No one is learning to woodwork, fish, etc. Cooming to anime is easier.
Right.
Yep. So true. You know, I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to. Exaggerate this too much. You know, people do stuff like that. Somewhat, just less. But yes, and no, I will not pronounce your name.
Yeah, but it's not normal for people to do things. Most people consider it, at least in my experience, right?
It would be exceedingly rare to find a Zoomer that is that can woodwork, for example, or to find one that can arrange metal. Find one that can actually make art.
Or could even cook a dish.
Yeah, and that's not even anything complex. Literally just something that can be given to people in even a semi-formal setting. Zoomers can't cook. They can't cook, they can't make, they don't create. That was one of the things that I was trying to hammer in my first video. Zoomers, they aren't creative, they don't make things, they don't imagine things. They, for whatever reason, I don't know the answer to this one, they don't do any of that. They are a completely dead generation in terms of conscience.
And of course, there are some exceptions.
We just got another 2 super chats, so going to
the rule of averages here, right?
Cringe Walker for $5. Screens are an idol. Just admit that. So true.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, they can be for some people.
They can be.
Yeah,
idols.
anything can be an
idols
idol.
of the heart. You know.
Yeah,
right. Well, it's
definitely.
like a theology of technology, right? Or a theology of wealth.
It was your guy Calvin that famously said, "The human heart is an idol factory."
Oh no, I mean I'd agree with that, of course.
I mean, it's in Ezekiel. It's
anything that is not God can be turned into an idol in a split second, just so long as people devote time to it over God.
Right. Yeah.
And for $5, Rittenhouse is the most courageous Zoomer I've ever heard of. Now he's had a picture taken with Charlie Kirk and has been on Crowder. Zoomers are cringe. Yep, so true.
You just
look it up.
everybody just type that it up.
Hot chip and lie. I have no idea what that means.
What do you guys think is the most popular thing for a Zoomer who want to do as a career?
YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's YouTube. But now,
living the dream.
But everyone here, what does YouTube actually involve behind the scenes?
Well, it depends on what you do. Some people, if you're just uploading footage, it's just doing what you normally do, but you have a camera and you broadcast it. There are very few people that will actually put time and effort into their videos. Those are the ones that you end up watching that make it past 100 subscribers. Some people, they'll have long discussions.
Whoa.
Yeah,
I will not allow you accuse me of putting time and effort into my videos.
No, I said that you had long form discussions.
Well,
Okay.
I would say in any case,
Well, it brings out the talent,
if we're talking even about kind of raw streams, I mean, this is of course more the case for people who produce actual professional content. Of course, they're using their hands and working with video editing software. But I would say that even with things like raw streams, there's still some intellectual work going on, right? So now it isn't in the same manner as carpentry or masonry, but I would still say that the desire for YouTube, as weird as it sounds, is still tapping into that into that base human instinct to do work, then I would say that Zoomers actually do want to do work. They just have certain tools in front of them to do it, and they don't have the ability to say do carpentry. Like, I don't have the money to do carpentry. I'd like to do carpentry, but I
Well,
can't.
it doesn't even have to be carpentry. You could take up fishing.
Well, yeah. But what I'm saying is that I don't think that Zoomers are just like these ephemeral animals. I think they still have the same instincts. They're just warped by the situation they're in.
Well, no, it could very well be that they have the instincts and they're just warped, but at this point it's warped beyond recognition.
Well, you have to think about it this way too.
I mean, I've just found it, so I don't think it's.
Well,
I think
no,
it's
even
present
with,
if you think about it.
With the YouTube stuff, if you made it work, if you made it something that where they couldn't just have a camera on themselves and then they just throw it out there, you actually had to put effort into it. The majority of Zoomers no longer then want to become a YouTuber.
Yeah,
I disagree. Completely disagree. Because
we got a white pillar here. We got a. I'm so white.
We have a
today.
contrarian here, I think.
It's not that they, maybe like Ryan said, they don't want to be YouTubers. Like, they do. People have this illusion, right? They want to be YouTubers because it seems easy. Like, oh, you just sit down and play video games, right? And there was a moment in time, if you think back to maybe like 2013, through 2016, 17, there was this era on YouTube where people were kind of deciding, what type of content are we going to do? Are we going to go like Rooster Teeth and make full production studios? And there were some people that pursued this, like Rhett and Link, and like that Higa TV guy doing like long skits and everything. Sugar Pine 7 is another example of like a long series on YouTube that failed. Those things failed. The production companies, the studios, the high glamour, the super high production value. What succeeded? What was most? What made the most financial gains? What made the most success? Ninja playing, live streaming, just sitting down in front of his computer and just talking and playing video games. Like the things that require talent and art and the most input maybe is less common. Like, it doesn't succeed nearly as much as just let me just sit here and welcome back to my 3-hour Let's Play of Minecraft. Today we're going to be mining diamonds.
I can definitely attest to this from personal experience. Like, long-time viewers of my channel know what gets me the best views. Can any of you guys guess this?
Your debate streams? I don't know.
No.
Drama streams?
No,
your
Vosh.
service videos.
Yeah, I was about to say
Vosh.
that.
Yes, Vosh gets me the best views.
Yeah, that's SEO. But what are the largest YouTube channels?
PewDiePie?
Probably.
Isn't it like an Indian company?
Yeah.
It's an Indian company, but it's also largely music channels, right?
Yeah.
Professional music channels where hundreds
None
of
of which are
thousands of
Zoomers.
hours.
Well,
Billie Eilish? Billie Eilish.
But you have to think about it.
And how much work is Billie Eilish doing in any of her videos? How much of it is just putting her on the screen because she's a woman?
There's tens of thousands of man hours put into each of these videos.
Yeah, but it's not her doing it, is it? And the person in question here is the Zoomer. The Zoomer.
Bro, am I gonna have to break both of you up again? What is this? Heartsy, come in here and make this stream good again.
Well, to be fair, there is some amount of work that goes into it because she does have to actually act out the music video. It's not like they're just superimposing her face onto another person. But that's just. I'm sorry. I don't want to
interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's all I wanted to say. Really.
Okay. Well, they probably bring in talent, people who know the best moves that will market to the most amount of people. Like, okay, here's the dance move to do here. She's not doing that. Her producers, Billie Eilish, for example, there's the example we're rolling with, so let's roll with it. Like, this person is probably one of the most manufactured people out of the music industry since, I don't know, ever, maybe.
It's
probably.
Friday.
Well, that was,
But
that's a good precursor.
But is Billie Eilish popular because she's Billie Eilish, or is she popular because music industry thrust her in the face of an entire generation?
Yeah, well, yes. The answer is yes. She's popular because the music industry thrust her in the face of an entire generation.
Exactly.
Because the generation doesn't know how to think, right? And this is back to Ryan's point. Like, they just kind of consume what's put in front of them.
But nonetheless, tens of thousands of man hours have to be put into that. That's my point.
And once again, the Zoomer in question that you tried to use to refute this didn't do those tens of thousands of man hours.
And I'm saying that the popularity isn't a result of the person. I'm saying that the effort that was put in by silent people is what made her popular. There's nonetheless
so
the
in this
element
case,
of work.
Yeah,
In
no,
this
but
case, then it's
I know I
irrelevant.
don't know. So I understand what you're saying, and it's true that like the biggest channels, the biggest one is T series, and the biggest channels are
Have you ever seen
are
a
very often
T-series
music
video?
channels.
It's not much art. There's not much art going in.
Yeah, but okay. So I agree with you on that's true. But I don't think that's really representative of what YouTube generally is, even if that's the biggest aspect of it. Like I think when someone says they want to be a YouTuber, I don't think they're saying I want to be an editor for one of Billie Eilish's videos. I think that is still content that we sort of understand is not really YouTube content per se, even if it dominates YouTube. Like for example, when like CNN or something is streaming to YouTube, like we don't say those are YouTubers, even if it gets tons of views. We understand there's YouTube content per se, which is like original content meant specifically for YouTube. And then there's other things that are like mainstream products that are put onto YouTube.
Okay, like my major point isn't so much to do with this. It's more to say there is still the human drive to make something manifest outside of that person, right? It isn't just complete social games. There is still the drive in humans to make manifest products in front of them. That's all the entire point I'm making.
But to justify that point, you use the example of a woman that got offered how much money by a production company that did all the work for her, so long as she just agreed to show up and do what they told her to.
And she still made a song, didn't she?
Okay,
yeah,
so
but not out of any
I'm gonna,
okay. Well, one important aside. I just want to say that hopefully one day I will be the ultimate YouTube grifter.
Just start making Steve Turley edits.
I mean, but do you think that most Zoomers that want to do YouTube do it out of a genuine desire to make content, or because they see it as an easy way to make it big? Because I feel like most people who go down that path have a very narrow view of how YouTube works. I think in their idea, in their mind, they just have to make a bunch of videos, eventually hit it big, and then just ride it out. But that's not really how it works. You gotta be extremely lucky. You gotta work the algorithm and.
Yeah, like I'm not like it's the process and the result of why they're doing it. If they really wanted to, if it was just a case of purely making money, then they would all be software engineers, but they aren't.
No, but it's the dual make money little effort.
Yes, exactly. You can't leave out both parts of the equation. If they were making YouTube content, whatever, because they had a genuine desire to create, why would they go to this one when there are much easier ways available to them for much lower cost in terms of time input or even material input if you buy a bunch of like lighting or software? Why would they be going to this thing that's a lot more costly and a lot less appreciated when they could do anything in front of them? So like this doesn't line up.
Yeah, we're not disputing that there's like a final cause to that action. What I'm saying is that there's an efficient one as well. There is the work that is put in nonetheless. There's a process. They don't just wish I had $1 million and then just sit on their bum. They want to do something.
Well,
Elliot, bro, if we had a patient, let's say our society is the patient in the doctor's office. We measure his heartbeat every now and then. Oh, it was normal. Oh, it's been going down lower and lower. Like this is some kind of marathon runner or some long-term bike athlete Olympic person. Oh, their heartbeat keeps going lower and lower. It's at 20 BPM now. And oh, their heart is still beating. Everything's fine, guys. Bro, it's like, yeah, so at a certain point the person collapses and dies, even their heart's still beating. It's at a rate that is survivable, I guess. Well, yes, it's not a question of there is 0 BPM here. It's the question of degree. And, that seems to be the issue here. But to be honest, I want to move on from the focus on, everyone wants to be a YouTuber.
Okay,
so,
before you move on, I have another super chat to do. Lita for $5 Australian. As is my right in the server, I hereby rename you all to Zoomer.
Okay,
well,
Zoomer.
you can feel free to do that in the Discord server, but you have no power here, Lita.
I'll listen to him. 21st is Zoomer coming up.
21st, David Carlson Zoomer.
How do I rename? I'm such a boomer.
You gotta leave. You gotta leave.
No, actually, I don't.
No, you just click the dots at the bottom of the screen and edit name is one of the options.
Boom! I am the most base person here now.
I'm gonna upload an avatar instead.
with the general point, you can't have a society that only consumes and doesn't produce. And whenever the Zoomers get into power, whenever the the brains of everything that we currently have running fall upon them, you're going to quickly see that they do just consume and they don't produce. Things are going to rapidly fall in terms of their quality and in terms of their upkeep. Your roads are going to get worse. Your electricity is going to go out more. You're going to get a lot of ideas that just vanish because no one talks about them anymore. No one cares to pass them on. You will see that happen, and it's going to be because the Zoomers just consume and they do not produce.
I like my
Okay,
new name.
so moving on to the next section. Honestly, I want to put a little addendum on this section. I wanted to get my point in from earlier about the family situation and how they're acting. Like as Turnip was just saying, how they're so low motivation for anything that's not giving that immediate impulse. I would say psychologically, especially among the girls, it's a much higher degree of anxiety and all these other psychological dysfunctions, depression, loneliness, that come from lacking that foundation. Like an intimate early family life, all that stuff that helps give a person mental health. And of course, this psychological situation that they're in contributes to the several of the addictions they have, whether it's online porn or vaping or all that crap and everything. So that's definitely part of it, because these addictions aren't necessarily just about the particular appetite itself. It is about kind of stimulating out, coping with the anxiety or that kind of fundamental hunger they have. I mean, the kids from the state schools, the public schools, come home every day, and I watch them walk home, and even like the middle school age, it's so blackpilling. Like the middle school age, there's like these girls, they're wearing like this androgynous emo clothing. This is middle school. Androgynous emo clothing. Like they look obviously extremely insecure, anxious, probably addicted to that online crap, probably vaping. It's like, wow, I want to scream into the Nietzschean void.
One of the points on my original list was the fact that you had a mass proliferation of drugs in the middle schools in the U.S., especially in the Midwest, and I don't know about the other parts.
Vaping, I wasn't. This is my boomerism. I wasn't there for the vaping, but it got way larger.
Even if you disregard vaping, there's marijuana in the middle schools, and like if you go back 100 years and you tell them your children aged, what would it be, like 12 to 14, are all going to be addicted to some drug coming out of the southern border, out of the south of the U.S., they would be insane and they would want to burn it all down.
In my high school, consumption of illicit substances is a very open thing. Like, people talk about it freely. It's not looked down upon by anyone in my school. It's like everyone does it, and there's no shame about it. And I find that kind of disgusting, honestly.
Yeah, I have to say that is one thing that was the case when I was in school. Is like, I remember in particular there's one location where everyone knew that like the students would go every lunch break to smoke weed, and occasionally the teachers would like break it up, but like it happened there every day and they normally just let it happen.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say probably the next topic that we haven't gotten to yet is the irony culture, the irony bro issue, and Turnip mentioned this in his original video he made on the Zoomers, where there's not, with the millennials, aka the younger boomers and the older boomers, it was all about apostatizing and breaking down, deconstructing those meta narratives about traditional religion and even basic political orthodoxy. And so that's what they were doing all the time, whining about that stuff. But now, like the generation after, the dust has settled, and they're being raised in that lack of a meta narrative. There really is a kind of postmodern situation where these kids don't even know what they believe, and of course that leads obviously to this vacuum filled up by the spirit of appetite, but the spirit of the appetite. But what do you guys think about that irony issue?
You can look to one very clear example. Look at a lot of Zoomer lingo. It is a bunch of ways to just emphasize that they are being serious, and the only reason that they would need to emphasize that they are being for real, that they're no cap. You have a few others that are crude that Settler told us not to curse at the start of the stream. But anyways, you have all this Zoomer lingo, and the majority of it is to emphasize sincerity. And that is because the Zoomers operate normally on such a lack of sincerity, on such a lack of reality, that whenever they finally are being real, they have to use multiple words to emphasize it just in one sentence.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was talking about this earlier, of course, that a lot of these issues are things that we struggle with. This is one thing I definitely struggle with, and I think anyone that has watched my channel for a while can figure that out pretty obviously. Like, say, my main live stream series is it based or is it cringe? Which is obviously an ironic title naming convention. And like I'll like I know, like, in my Discord server when we talk about like religious stuff, and when something positive happens, when someone's like, oh yeah, I started RCIA or something like that, I'll often say, oh, based. And it's it's such stupid language to describe to describe stuff like this. And I understand that this probably is not the type of language that should be used. But yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I don't use all the Zoomer lingo. I don't use for real, no cap. But yeah, that this type of language is stuff that I use to a certain extent.
Yeah, I actually full-heartedly relate to that, because I often find myself using new lingo that I find stupid, ironically. Like, I used to say based, cringe, blackpilled, all those things ironically in response to things. Based. But now I sometimes find myself just using them in everyday discussion, and like, I can't do that. That's I need to stop that. I need to stop ironic usage of words becoming part of my actual lingo. It's
when the guy with the comedy channel is the most down to earth of all these guys. The irony.
I've got a funny story if you guys want to hear it. So when I went to university, I was trying to tone down on this language, right? So I was trying to not say this, like this kind of meme language. And I went to this party within, I think it was the first 3 or 4 weeks of being there. And I sat down with a couple of guys who are quite a bit older than me. I still know them. And one of them, like, we're talking about politics, and one of them gets the sense that I might be, in on something. So he goes very loudly to me, "You're a big guy." And because I'd been drinking, I'd had like 2 or 3 beers at that point. I went, "For you," just reflexively. And that was how we became friends. That's how ingrained the meme language actually is, at least with me. I don't know if anyone here can relate to that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of any specific examples, but like, when I hear meme words IRL, I definitely always connect them to the meme. Like, Among Us, I guess, an example. If I read that anywhere, like, I think of the Among Us meme. So yeah, it's very deeply ingrained in my head.
Yeah, like, for the people in the chat, like, the guy knew what he was doing. He explained afterwards that he thought that I might be on that wavelength, and he just decided he'd shoot something at me to see what would happen.
I love doing that, where you just say some innuendo to see how high their power level is, and it's just very entertaining. Anything else from David Zoomer? What do you think about the irony bros?
Oh, I am. I. This is a problem I have too. I'm an irony bro, big time. People can't tell I'm being sarcastic, especially older people. They just cannot. And it's probably one of the problems I have socializing with a lot of normal people.
I've talked to boomers in real life more recently than I've done in a long time, and they're literally and they get so confused. They get so confused.
Yeah,
it's like literally they can't even understand what I'm saying.
But yeah, no, I believe that there's a certain, there are warnings in the book of Proverbs against imprecise language. I think that this is something I've been working on personally. I think that just sarcasm in general has done a very, by a large degree, I've been a net negative in my life, and then trying to cut it out, I think, is important. You want to be precise with language. You want to be direct, but also kind, of course. So the irony, the sarcasm about, being, I'm a super humble person, but I'm also a genius. Like, where fake hubris or maybe like actual pride disguised as sarcasm is like a problem that I think we in the Zoomer right have a lot of issues with, like this fake type of pride that's actual pride, like post irony, like ironic irony. It just it obfuscates the truth. It's deceptive. Elliot, do you have is that?
Oh, is it my mic?
I think it might be. I don't know. I can't tell. Is it 21st Zoom? Yeah. Okay, it was you.
I think it was 21st. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. It went away.
I'm just whizzing by here.
Okay. It sounds like you're like recording next to your PS4.
It was a joke. It was a joke. I'm not whizzing at all. Please.
I don't know what that means. But where was I? Yeah, like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, "I am only joking." Proverbs 26:18-19. So true, said Luce Lament. Yeah, I think sarcasm is a net negative, and I think that it does a great amount of harm to this generation. It's one of the things that we just use to maybe, because we're not so good at being confrontational, broadly speaking. I think that it is a sign of weakness and cowardice. Probably, it's something that we should try to stop. But
my poor priest, who's this guy? He's not like super old or anything, but he's a very not online person, solemn person, not somber, just like a serious, like a gently, sincere, serious person. Everything. So whenever I'm just like interacting with them, making these stupid teases, or just the irony, just the Zoomer language and like disposition, I feel like I just break his brain. It's terrible. So yeah, I mean, definitely, a lot of these boomers have like double takes with me. They're like so confused and bamboozled by the pesky Zoomers. So gentlemen, I was wondering.
For $2, curious, will you go to college and for which study? I've already been to college. I don't really know who this is directed towards, and I'm not major doxing myself. So nice try, Fed. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on this question for themselves?
I just finished my master's and I'm currently teaching at a uni.
So you're not a Zoomer. You're a
yeah, that's you're way older.
I started the job like for this just semester now, and I'm going to be leaving. But I'd still say I'm a Zoomer.
He's spiritually Zoomer for sure, but a bit too much white pilling though.
I just go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say to David like a recommendation of a book, because like the whole confrontation thing. There's a really, really good book written by one of the church fathers called St. Gregory the Great. And it's called The Pastoral Rule. And he has an entire book, like 60 pages, devoted just on how to properly admonish different kinds of people. It's really cool.
Interesting.
So it might be something worth having a look at.
What's it called? I'm going to write that down.
It's called The Pastoral Rule by St. Gregory the Great. I'll write it in the chat for anybody who wants to read it.
Yeah, I probably am going to go to college. We'll see how. Probably for like English writing or something, and then but
the English courses are gonna be literally commie, bro. Just so you know.
Well, I would not move to the English departments, man.
I'd probably end up going to Liberty University.
Okay.
Or something like that. We'll see.
I just started my degree in economics, so
yeah, we can tell.
Lol. Okay, well. Well, I hope that goes well.
I hope you're focusing on distributist economics.
I really would love to tie in economics to any sort of metaphysical backing and just see how the different metaphysical systems will align with, what they teach.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's actually a lot of old economists who write like this. Like, have you ever heard of Luis de Molina?
Well, no, but hold that thought. Finish what you were saying.
Yeah, so before Adam Smith, there was this kind of approach to economics, right? Adam Smith, was a was a professor of morality, right? He was an ethics professor, and of course, economics is an expression of that.
Right.
But before Adam Smith, there was an entirely different approach. You have more of a, I mean, there's an entirely different system of morality working
coming out of the Spanish scholastics.
Yeah, out of the Salamancans specifically.
Right.
So if you go and find Molina, I've heard Molina's got works on economics. Bellarmine might be useful for politics. I mean, he provided inspiration to the founding fathers of the US, so it's worth. I think that's people I would start poking around.
A lot of Murray Rothbard's works. He was a scholar of the Spanish scholastics and a few other scholastics as well. Quite famously, even though he could not bring him or did not have faith himself, he was quite a devoted student to a lot of them, and it influenced a lot of his writings. That's why I'm quite partial to the Austrians and their tradition.
Because you're a liberal. Okay, so sorry, I'm being irony.
Well, no. I mean, Radlib and I just did a series on Erich von Knott-Ledine's book, where he tries to, basically just say it's not the liberalism that's bad, but the democracy part.
Okay, so
can we actually circle back? Now that we kind of passed that super chat.
Well, I did want to circle back. I wanted to ask you guys, where do you think this irony is coming from? What's the source, cause? What's keeping it going?
Tearing down any real institution.
No, but what inculcated this irony in the Zoomer? What was the cause of them always having this disposition? It's not just from them. They're very passive, right? So it had to come from somewhere, or be caused by something.
Well, I would say that firstly, I think when people were saying, well, what about satire? I think satire is cool. There are biblical ways to use satire, but when you begin to, and this is going to wrap into this, but when you begin to use sarcasm and I guess a jestful spirit to kind of try to escape responsibility or honesty, that's when you're veering into the negative.
It's really the insincerity part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. If you're being satirical in integrity and truthfully satirical, then I think you're fine. There are ways that Jesus Christ used satire against the Pharisees. And I think that the like overabundance of sarcasm comes from a combination of things. It comes from people not being able to socialize with one another and speak truthfully about things. I think the effects of that, Ryan, are the destruction of anything real in life, and I think it also comes from a place of insecurity. No cap.
And I think those things together, the insecurity, the unable to be fully up and honest with someone, is part of this. There's no safe. I know it's very ironic. I'm not saying this in an ironic fashion, but the state of it is in a sense ironic, because with all the safe space and the idea of, you're going to have this place where you can be vulnerable, that and all the other stuff we were talking about is partially probably caused by there is no home base where you can be vulnerable and honest with someone. There is no social foundation that you can fall back on and say, hey, say the hard-hitting stuff to someone, but it's not going to break down everything. So obviously the family.
That point about the social foundation, think about every other past generation before now where the church was present. They were the foundation that kept people in an objective real. It was the church. And from the church, you derive the Christian and Western family structure. You derive, the proper way of Christian schooling. You derive everything else, the vocation. You can derive every other part of, or at least Western life, from the foundation of the church. And whenever that is dropped in the last century, you no longer have an anchor into anything real or objective. And of course, you're going to end up with people that aren't real and are very sarcastic and ironic, because they have never experienced anything real. They don't have the foundation, and they never felt the foundation.
Hartsey, you're an expert on this. What would you say about it?
I think it's just people, Zoomers just fear sincerity. And I honestly just think that's it. Like, sincerity is a scary thing to a lot of people, and they don't want to express
you can
it.
be, you can be if no, like we were saying, all these you know, preparatory causes that are causing this anxiety, depression, loneliness, lack of empathy, especially because you know there's no early life good stuff that helps with that.
Mhm.
That's literally like a, you know, a huge psychological factor with people, where if they don't get those early life experiences that are meaningful, it does decrease their empathy like for the rest of their life. So you know, if you're surrounded by all these people who have no empathy and are just completely dysfunctional and everything, they'll always lash out at someone as with an excuse, out, you know. So of course they're going to be scared to be vulnerable with everyone else because no one else has really any true love for them.
Yeah, so they shield their true emotions with layers and layers of sarcasm. It's kind of sad.
Where's your
So
white pill,
true.
Elliot?
Here's another super chat. Keno Parker for $2. How can Zoomers develop meaningful relationships with Jesus?
Can I answer?
Yeah.
Ryan, I know Ryan was really excited to get into this one. But I feel like he's going to take it somewhere else. So I'll just say this first, and then we can move on. I think it needs to be in real life. It needs to be over something. You need something to bond over, something physical, not not to say that we can't be friends online.
Something that's
but-
not Gnostic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally, completely.
So, anyways,
agree.
that's the first. That's the starting point. Make sure it's real.
Yeah, we weren't going to be too terribly different. I was going to say the ones that do actually develop a meaningful and real relationship, it's going to be in real life. It's going to be over something that they have both like they both have common interests. It's going to be people that actually, have their first principles. They are going to be the ones that develop any, meaningful relationship. The very few that do. What that means, though, for the rest of them that don't and, still pursue a relationship of some sort, it's going to collapse very violently and destructively. And, you can see this has happened with other generations. This isn't a new thing. The divorce rates have been surging for who knows how long. And this is part of the reason why. Some of it's because you don't have the church there to say no, but then you also have the positive aspect, what's pushing it instead of holding it back. This is what's pushing it, is the fact that, you don't have these first principles in common. You don't do the same things or, do anything in common. For a lot of them now in the modern world, it's not in person. You have these parasocial relationships with e-girls and who knows what else that only develop because there is no connection to anything real.
And even when I am hanging out with like my roommate or my friends, sometimes I'll catch us sending memes to one another.
Right.
We're just sitting on the couch and it's like, what are we doing? What is this? So yeah,
If you, I had a real like internal cringe oof moment, like, oh, check my privilege, or check anyone's privilege here, where Ryan was like, oh, all these divorced people. I was like, what would be good to say? Oh, talk to your parents. If you haven't had an IRL conversation with them before in a while, just, you don't have to talk about anything super important, just about anything, whatever. Just cultivate that. I'm like, oh wait, all that has been nuked. But I don't know if if there's a single parent there, that you're in the vicinity of, just talk to them about anything without using your device.
I'm actually made a 45-minute video on how to get a girlfriend, and it's not really so much aimed at getting the girlfriend. Actually, like the title, it's relevant, but I think that while there is something to be said for having the flesh and blood person in front of you, of course, it's extremely important for communication. I think that a much bigger issue is that even if you had, like, say, an EMP wipes out every single phone, all of the internet and everything like that, right? Let's say that happens, right? And there's no ill side effects, everyone can eat and all that. People are still going to be socially crippled, not because of the exposure to the phones per se, but because they're not virtuous people. They don't have any kind of character with which to interact. And so in order to make truly, truly good relationships, you need to have a level of virtue there. You need to be able to bear with another person's failings, right? And that takes fortitude. Like everyone has their own flaws which annoy people. You need that first of all. You need a kind of a mutual, I hesitate to call it charity, but a kind of a mutual love in that you will the good of the other person. Like, just as, two examples. It's, while I think that, like, of course, being on the end of a computer does make a serious, it makes a serious impact. I think that the much bigger impact is fundamentally that people aren't developed in their characters.
Spot on.
I find myself in an odd situation where I desire to have a partner or like a significant other, but I look at the people around me and I just can't see myself ever vibing with them because I look
That's
at
not a
them
contradiction. That makes sense.
and I see my fellow generation. A lot of them have where personalities don't match well. They have very to little no empathy for their fellow men. Uh, I just can't see myself. I just can't see myself being with someone like that. And it's kind of hard because it's hard when almost everyone in the generation either has those qualities or qualities very similar. It's
Yeah, like this is going to sound to some of you like it's a meme, but unironically, like I did all of this PUA stuff. I read a couple of like a book on it. I was associated with that community. I was associated with all that. Unironically, the best way to get a good girlfriend is to pray for one. Unironically,
So true.
unironically,
that 9-day
like-
novena to Saint Joseph, it
like-
works.
like
Let's
like not even
go.
like I'm not even joking, right? Like I spent all this time like talking to women that were a fundamental waste of my time. They weren't people that I wanted to get married to and make have the whole institution going with, right? But the moment I prayed, I mean, I met my current girlfriend in lockdown. I didn't have to go out to bars, I didn't have to go out to clubs to meet women, right? If you ask, you will receive if it is for your spiritual good.
Lord grant me a pious spouse. Yes.
Literally. Like
You have to do the novena to Saint Joseph. Unironically, people do a 9-day. There's a certain prayer. I forget. People could probably search it up if they just search up Saint Joseph novena. It's a simple prayer that started as an ancient tradition where you pray it 9 days in a row, and you have an intention for a good grace. And obviously if it's not in your spiritual interest, then it won't occur, but still, it's like the biggest giga chad dad that has ever been around. You might want to ask him. He seems pretty good. So yeah, do that.
Yes, there's another super chat. Marcher for $2. Heartsy wants a partner. He should become a cop. So true, Marcher.
I feel like this is an experience that a lot of guys have. Heartsy, it's just yeah. I'd like a mate, but there's no one that really is desirable because of their, I guess, their standards, right? Their morals, the way they live their life is degrading in of itself. So I'd say you're not alone.
I mean,
and that's not a contradiction. That's normal at this point. So you have to like you guys said, pray for it and seek out that seek someone out.
Like,
yeah, I mean,
literally...
I would say, like, if your problems are if not just for your heart, but in general, if the problems you're having with women, like the dislike you have of them is like sexual stuff, or the general sort of things we've been talking about today, I really don't think there's a way to find a GF like that other than being involved in a church community.
Yes,
and I'm not even just saying this because I want everyone to be a Christian and I want everyone to be Catholic specifically.
Which we do.
I do. Yes, I do. I want everyone to be Catholic, obviously. But just practically, I don't know how you could find a woman that doesn't have these problems outside of a church community. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it just that seems to me to be where you would generally find these types of women.
Yeah, the
Can
vast
I-
majority.
Go ahead.
Final,
Yeah,
just a final thought from me. There, like every single person in this chat, you have no reason to despair over women, because everything that the world is was foreknown by God, and everything that will be in future is foreknown also. So everything has its plan, everything has its rational ordering principle in the omnipotent divine mercy. So you despairing about girlfriends, right? God already knows. You need, and God will even put the thought into your heart to pray for it. Like, there is no reason to despair at all. Like, this isn't just like happy clappy, like, airy fairy, like hopeful thinking, right? We know through reason that our world is centered on God, which is which is pure being with a rational mind. We know these things are predestined, so you don't need to worry. You need only ask when you get the impulse to, and then you will receive if God believes this will help you. Because relationships, they aren't a joke. They're hard a lot of the time, and they get harder and harder, right? And it's a crucifixion. We are called by St. Paul to die to self, in some cases actually die for the sake of our wives, right? And this process of crucifixion is there to sanctify us, right? So a good wife can be not only a cross, but also a spiritual benefit. So bear that in mind.
So, okay, 2 points on this. First of all, I wanna like protect my fellow Zoomer bros here. The language we have about this stuff is a bit confusing and it's dangerous. Tome was satirically, Seller was showing it for a second. So Tome was satirically saying, "Oh, I can fix her," as the joke. That's the joke people have where they're gonna always white knight and everything. But we've got a few issues here, especially with our language. Relationship, girlfriend. Oh, we're together. We're cleaved together for a bit, and this has to do with the white knight thing too, where people are saying all these words connote that you are forming this attachment, this relationship, this obligation that you have together, when that is something that is only really fulfilled in marriage. And then the issue is like they're half the time they're going to think, especially because there's very few girls that are virtuous, is that I'm going to cleave myself into the situation and then white knight and try and fix her. So just don't get caught in that. It's all about courtship and what's the phrase, like just like a arm's breadth away. It's just this kind of healthy, reasonable detachment. Okay, the second part was me. I'm not anti-white pill. I'm actually with Elliot on this. I'm a white pillar also, but I'm a white pillar in that you have to get so black pilled that you become white pilled. You pass through the fire and water into white pilled again. So the issue here is, like he said, whatever happens will be for your spiritual good, and you have to accept that. That means, a lot of people might have to accept, suffering, loneliness, or other trials for the rest of their life, in this life, and you have to deal with it, and you have to survive through it. I'm just saying, sometimes things don't work out, because like Rome is collapsing or whatever other situation, but you have to endure it or else. So that's the so black pilled that you're white pilled thing that I'm saying. I'm just saying it's possible that is a scenario, but it would still be for your spiritual good, because people like to say, oh, the martyrs and all these people that died and had excruciating, albeit brief circumstances of suffering before they were extinguished. There's also a kind of martyrdom of a long life with smaller yet difficult mortifications that are sustained, that have to be persevered through. Like the Desert Fathers, they had a very penitential life for decades and decades and decades weighing on them. So we just have to be prepared for that, and that means we really gotta buckle up, and it requires a certain amount of fortitude that I think the Zoomers are dangerously lacking, where we have to prepare for these situations we're in. And look at it in the context of our forefathers. There's so many generations of young men that were, slaughtered or just irreparably damaged in wars or some kind of catastrophe, because they're, let's be real, they're the cannon fodder, essentially, of society. And so if we look at it in that bright context, maybe it's not too bad that you'll suffer these maladies that we have in the current era.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that this is this question was originally, there's more than just the romantic relationships, right? In the pursuit of a mate, and the attempts to for marriage, but the question was about relationships in general, and I think it also goes back to what Settlers was saying, and that is just in real life.
Hey, whoa. Did you use the plural form of my name?
Settlers Lament.
Well,
Settlers
it is
Lament.
either settler, because I am the settler, or the channel is Settlers Lament. There's no settlers. Okay, those are the options. You call me
It's just-
Settlers Lament or settler. Those are the options.
All right. So, anyways, Settlers was saying that
No.
got him. Yeah, like go to church. That's where you're going to find relationships with like-minded men who you'll be able to get along with. And there's no Zoomers in church. Well, congratulations. Now you're friends with a bunch of Gen X boomers. Like that's kind of.
I mean, I about this, like, whether or not there's Zoomers in church, I've heard people complain about this. At least in my experience, living in a not a huge city, but living in a city, in a relatively large city.
Mhm.
In my experience, if you go to like young adult stuff, whether it's if you're high school age, if it's youth stuff, or if it's more like post high school, like college age stuff, you're going to find quite a few young adult Christians, or like
it gets to a point where it doesn't matter, right? If you're 22 years old, you can.
Just the point I'm trying to make is, like, if you like go to mass, or if you're a heretic and you go to some heresy service, and you're like getting upset that you're not like meeting a girl in the 5 minutes before you go home after church. I feel like you're sort of missing the point. The place where you make relationships, whether they're romantic or friendships, is at like events outside of church that are church events. And in like, perhaps if you don't live in a city, it might be harder because just there's a much smaller population density. I don't know. But in my experience, if you go to young adults events or youth events or whatever, you're going to find a significant number of people. That's not to say that they'll all be high quality people, but still the pool is going to be decent in my experience.
Yeah, being able to bond over a community, and the point I wanted to make was that, like, Zoomers are the most lonely, right? That's what they say. Zoomers are the most lonely generation. That has to do with alienation, which we talked about, the hyper over reliance on like the internet and social media and things like this, and just the wacky beliefs that disconnect us from one another, the hyper atomization, right? So I think really just plugging in, which is, I guess, getting connected with the community, all these buzzwords that they use, it actually will work if you put effort into it and try to be a real life human being. Like, don't be fake, right? Just speak the truth courageously, and don't be an antisocial autist.
Well, I think that last one's the hardest thing.
It really do be hard. I mean, some of the people I know in real life where they're Zoomers, they're obviously very online. Some of them are like based and everything. It's like the human person, like the real life person, is this kind of shell of their interior mind or disposition or whatever that they might present online, for example. It's strange where it's like you talk to them and they don't really, they're it's just this, it really is this online antisociality where these people don't really interact with you in real life if you give them discussion, consideration. It's very strange.
Yeah. I'm sure people have described it like this before, but it almost feels like it's filling in blank codes of responses, right? So you input a dialogue into, and they have a prefigured, pre-programmed response to something. That's what conversation feels with a lot of people. But just, I think that's true when you're talking to them. But when you are capable of getting someone in a conversation where you're actually speaking to one another and you're asking questions about them, there is a flurry of interests that might be able to come out, and that's how you'll be able to find if someone's interesting. Zoomers can still make relationships. And that's what I thought the question was. Like, okay, Zoomers are down this horrendously. Is it even possible for them to make relationships? I think the answer is yes. I think it takes a lot of work, though, to actually form real relationships, right? So do you want to move on maybe to the I'm taking over your role as minion. Do you want to move on maybe to the the future of the Zoomer generation? I know that was
that's probably very good as a concluding topic. Oh man, my name is appropriate for this topic. I don't know, Elliot, you want to have a
Look, I'll say my piece first because it's probably the most positive.
Yeah,
No.
let's do a nice foil between each other. Let's do a nice dynamic there.
The church will survive. People will join the church. Do I think there's going to be a mass conversion? Well, I hope there's a miracle. That's my view.
Yeah, I do have to affirm that the ultimate white pill is that the church will survive.
I predict that suicide rates will go up to 0.1%. And for people that don't understand suicide stats, that is astronomically high. That is astronomically high. You know, because suicide is actually this very rare phenomenon, even when millions and millions of people are depressed. So yeah, up to 0.1% or maybe 0.05%. Some stupidly high number like that. Also,
If you're talking about somewhere like the United States, that's about 35 million people.
wait,
That would be
no,
10%.
no, that's
Oh, sorry.
wait, that's
no,
what.
0.1.
So
0.1 is 10%.
no, 0.1%. So not 10% or 1%. That's 10% of 1%.
Oh, percent. Okay, sorry.
The top 1% of the top
Right,
1%.
yeah, no, I get, yeah.
But that will be mostly young men. And then what else? You know, obviously the high school labor is going to be down. They're going to have to bring it from these other places. I mean, we see it now, obviously, like the Zoomers. When are you going to interact with them in the labor force? It's when they're working at McDonald's or Taco Bell. I have almost always had my Taco Bell order wrong. They don't give me the hot sauce. But to be serious, Turnip said about the electricity and the utilities and just other quality of labor is going to go down a lot. And we're going to see more of these niches that are considered niches now. For example, like furries. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you can use the word.
Yeah, furries, for example, these extremely weird sexual or some kind of other addictive niches, they're going to become more mainstream, and it's going to be just outwardly acceptable. And yeah, I think that's all I could say that everybody else is not going to just repeat. Next person.
I would like to think that one day traditional values will make a big return and that everything will be all fine. But
That
I
happens
genuinely-
after collapse. That happens a century or two afterwards.
I don't think that'll happen anytime soon, and I think people and society as a whole will stray even further and further away from the traditional values that unify us as people, and it's I don't know where it's going to end. I don't know how far it will be considered too far, but that's what I think. That's what I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll go, I guess. I think things will get considerably worse before they get better. I think we're seeing trends right now that indicate that things are only going to get worse. We're talking about people like myself who struggled with an early introduction to graphic content online, addiction to video games, addiction to very kind of like new things when I was growing up that are now extrapolated. They're getting worse. Zoomers are dressing more provocatively. They're doing more provocative things. Romans chapter 8, they are becoming, I think it's chapter 8. I might be wrong here, but they are, I think people now, I think their minds are becoming debased sooner and sooner, and younger. I think we're going to see that continue to happen that's just the spiritual and the fleshly, but when it comes to work ethic, when it comes to work in general on the economy, I've been seeing these Bloomberg articles, things like this they're talking about a great resignation. Zoomers are not working. They refuse to, or they're not filling the roles of jobs that are people often say like, oh, these are entry level jobs for high schoolers, young adults, and immigrants or whatever. And the young adults, they're just not working. They're just lazy. I don't know. They don't care about anything other than instant satisfaction. And like I said, we're going to see this to continue. I don't think we have any real uplifting trends that indicate that anything will change. at the moment until there is a point where something happens that is a reset in the system, that something will change. I don't want to say winds the clock back, but maybe a new paradigm is formed.
All right, is that my turn then?
Yeah.
All right, so with the Zoomers, history moves in a sort of wave pattern. That's not to say it's cyclical. It's not to say it's a line. You will have peaks where there is golden ages, and you will have troughs where there is just a lack of any real hero or men or anything along those lines. You're heading towards the depth of the trough right now. What you're about to see is the church has abdicated responsibility in the past century. The shepherds completely lost control of their flock. Parents have abdicated their responsibility. They've completely failed to raise the last few generations. The schools have been absolutely terrible. So you're going to have a lot of knowledge that is absolutely necessary for a civilized society to function, and they're not going to have that knowledge. Hence the material things that we discussed earlier. The system that's in place is not really favorable towards Zoomers. You have the minimum wage and a bunch of other employment requirements that have completely hemmed them out of the market. They don't have that ever coveted experience before they get an actual job. You're not allowed to do that systematically. You have all these other things. The Zoomers refuse to actually take up any. The Boomers refuse to take up any Zoomer, apprentices or anything like that. So even basic physical skills aren't being passed on. The families have been completely destroyed. So you no longer have that extended family to pick up the slack where anyone else might have failed. You have a lot of things that are missing, and it's just reality that because they are missing, things are not going to be too terribly good. That does not mean they're going to be forever that way. In fact, if you do this correctly, you can still avoid a lot of this. If you just have a family, get yourself a plot of land or something, you can probably avoid most of the societal collapse. There were people that did something similar when Rome collapsed. You could very well live out the monastic lifestyle just with the family instead of the theological attributes. So it's not all doom and gloom. It is, you do have to face the reality, though. Just about everything that can go wrong has, short of open persecution of Christians in the streets, and even then we're getting there. Like, you still have churches shut down in parts of the West under the guise of medical tyranny. So it's not looking good. That doesn't mean for despair, though. Cast all of your doubts and worries upon God. He will help you. We were told earlier in the stream by our lovely white pillar, these things have all been sought out, or they've all been seen by God. Don't worry. It doesn't even have to be in terms of a woman. Just don't worry in general. You're asked not to do that in the Gospels and the epistles. Even though these things are absolutely terrible, even though society around you is collapsing, God will protect you. He knows your worries and your heart. These things have been sought out for your good.
To add on to that, and I think that's completely true, I want to add a little bit of nuance, though, because there was a very wise saying I heard from a Muslim. It's originally from a Muslim. I heard it from a convert from Islam to Christianity, and that is that when raising your children, you should not raise them in light of your own generation, but you should raise them in light of the next generation. Now, what we've discussed here, I think that it's a start. But one of the things that I would really like to see out of people online, and we've got a lot of people here, is if there could be a real serious systematic study into how the economic, social, religious, what have you situations are going to be when our children are in school. So this could be 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 years in the future for people. And I think that although we can trust in the Lord, He also has given us minds in order to be prudent. And that relies on us. That part of that is going to be knowing our material and societal expectations. And so what I'd recommend is that while praying more, because everyone needs to pray more, St. Paul and Jesus himself tells us that we should pray always, not in the sense of sitting down with the Psalms and always reading them, but always having God before us and always raising our mind up to the Lord, right? While we need to do this, because this will give you power, this will give you what you need, there also needs to be actual structured study into where we are going, so that we, as people who are going to have families, very likely, know how to properly raise our children and protect them.
By homeschooling. All right, Seller, did you want to go or do you want me to go?
You can go.
Yeah, so this would probably be my concluding statement on all of this. I'm just going to read a section from Luke 13. And there were present, this is from the gospel, obviously, and there were present at that very time some that told him of the Galileans, whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. And he answering said to them, think you that these Galileans were sinners above all the men of Galilee, because they suffered such things? No, I say to you, but unless you shall do penance, you shall all likewise perish. Or those 18 upon whom the tower fell in Silo and slew them, think you that they also were debtors above all the men that dwelt in Jerusalem? No, I say to you, but except you do penance, you shall all likewise perish. So yeah, very hard words right there. Well, essentially, I mean, you think this is all bad? This is where it's, extreme loneliness, no families, everyone's degenerate, society collapsing. There have been, in other eras, there have been wars, there's been stuff like this. And then even worse, if you're not careful, it's the fires of hell, if you likewise perish. So I'm begging you guys, Zoomers out there. See, my title, I'm saying loving my fellow Zoomers. This is what I mean. I'm begging you, please, please, please get off the video games and repent and go back to Catholic Church specifically, or else you might likewise perish. Because if you don't, 70 years of loneliness, depression, meaninglessness that is in our current society is nothing compared to how hot hellfire is. It's so, so, so hot. So what we really need to do is get serious about this and, do penance or you shall likewise perish. And I mean, that's why I gotta tell them.
Gonna add some spice to that, right? You will probably have this idea of hell where you can see everybody else there and all of the flames. Now, it would seem to me that you could find a certain beauty in this. So I suspect that hell is actually going to be pitch black. You're not going to be even able to hear the other people screaming. So, yeah.
Okay, but I'm not trying to be so edgy. I'm trying to just scare them and everything. I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly. I'm adding.
I'm not. It's like he's just being a Zoomer. He just wants to be edgy and you're really spicing up the takes here. Spicy burrito. No, I'm just serious. It's like that's forever, and you if you don't take it seriously, you need to go back, especially if you are not in the bosom of the Catholic Church and faithfully wedded to it. You're in grave peril. And so this is the most important thing that that will save the Zoomers, especially when they have no fundamental meaning foundation that they have generally. So yeah, get off the video games, and if you do not repent, you will likewise perish.
Something that the fire and brimstone preachers often leave out is that no amount of pain or suffering in hell can equate to just what you lose by not being united with Christ and with God. There's a great deal lost there, and it's impossible to quantify with words, and the only way that we can actually communicate it is by saying what you get instead rather than what you lose.
So true.
That's right, Turnip.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't really feel like I have much to add. What are my predictions for the future of the Zoomers? I don't know. Not very optimistic. Yeah, I don't know. What else can I say? The only things that could really fix this this generation, well, one, to annoy any libertarians that still happen to be following me, is vigorous government action. That would be helpful if it was good vigorous government action, not bad vigorous government action. But yeah, is that going to happen? No. How do we survive? I mean, it's what's everyone been saying here. Only in the church. Yeah, I don't think I have much else to say other than that, though. But it's the 2-hour mark, which I believe that means it's officially time to transition to the theology portion of the stream. So Dave, actually, we're going to be debating the topic of contraception today. That's a joke. Okay, we're done, right? Does anyone have anything they want to add, or?
No, we're basically done here. Zoomers, come back, please.
Okay, well,
Don't
it's
perish.
shilling time then.
Heck, yeah.
We can start with you, Dave.
Well, I'm David. My dad is Dave. I make YouTube content, I guess. I am getting into writing articles, which might be on a Substack, might be published. I'm not sure. But you can find me at DC Perspective on YouTube. I have an Instagram. I'm David NC__. I was on Twitter. I was banned in the most recent wave. I might come back. Probably not. I've noticed since I've been gone, it's been a lot easier to function. Actually, it's been good for me. So yeah, link in the description of my channel. You should just subscribe. I upload occasionally, and thanks for having me on. I thought this was a really good conversation, and Ryan, guys, Elliot, it's been a pleasure to talk to you guys for the first time, and
It was very enjoyable.
you guys have a hope you guys have a good one.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Who else would like to shill?
Everybody's trash talking Instagram. You guys just don't appreciate aesthetics. That's the thing.
There's only women on there. Come on.
That is absolutely not true. You know, the distributist, that's his only social media, right?
Ooh.
He's on Telegram, I guess, too. But
No, I
That
didn't
doesn't-
know he was on
Nothing
this.
that you've said has countered what I said.
Okay, someone chill, quick.
I guess I'll go next. My name's Hartsy Protsy. I'm on YouTube, spelled exactly how it is on stream right now. And I would say go follow my Twitter, but I have been banned 3 times, so there is no use in doing that. So yeah, Hartsy Protsy on YouTube. I make short comedic videos, although it's been a while since I uploaded, and I will get to that soon.
Yeah, it's a very good channel. It's the #1 bread tube channel on YouTube, actually.
Exactly.
Wow.
Okay, who else would like to go? Okay, Elliot, go.
Okay, so I am Computing the Soul. I tend to do videos that are more documentary focused. They're kind of, I'd say it's split between practical videos and more complicated, philosophical, theological. I might start doing historical stuff at some point as well. I produce these. They tend to be more long form. Sometimes they're shorter, but that's my purpose with my channel. And in terms of what I'm doing next, I'm not sure. I'm kind of playing with the idea of doing something on the historicity of the Book of Daniel. But yeah, that's me, I guess.
Okay, Ryan.
I have a YouTube channel under the name that you see here, Ryan Turnipseed. I have so far a series of 3 videos on the Zoomers, and first one is laying out the issues. Second one is on education. The third one is on, how did we get here? What might be able to stop it. And then I have also another video that I put out for Academic Agents Carlisle Day, and it is Carlisle's letters on Martin Luther and his on heroes and hero worship. Coming soon, though, I'm hoping to release another video on the relationships of Zoomers. It got brought to my attention about yesterday or 2 days ago. I forget now. That there's some people just don't know what it's like out there for Zoomers and how they court each other or lack thereof. So
Yeah.
probably going to be the next video. And hopefully one day I can get out of this depressing, terrible nonsense to do with my generation, start actually focusing on history. That's what I would like to do in the future. So stay tuned for that.
Dead people.
All right.
Okay, 21st.
Please, for real. I don't even know all the words. I give up. For real, repent and believe the gospel. You will perish if you do not fling your mind, body, and soul onto the foot of the one true Catholic Church. That's all I have to say. Consecrate yourself to Mary. She'll protect you. She'll be nice to you. If you do a daily rosary, that'll probably help protect you from all those demons that want you to, do sins of the flesh. Do all these things or you're not going to make it.
Now, would you say that for real, no cap, God is bussin'?
Maybe. I don't know the full connotation, so I'm gonna. But for real, I know that part. For real, do this or you're not gonna make it.
So true.
Yeah, so that leaves me. Subscribe to Settlers Lament. Donate on Subscribestar or Patreon or wherever. Join the Catholic Church. Pray for me. And that's it. Join my Discord. Join Computing the Souls Discord. Follow me on Twitter. That's pretty much it.